Evening, everyone. This is your closing comment. It is 6:53 on February 10th. And as I'm sure you know by now, we had numbers this morning. We had numbers for both continuing and initial claims. Both of those were basically unchanged. We also had CPI and core CPI. CPI came in at up 6 tenths versus up 4 tenths expected, so 50% higher. Ex food and energy, for those of us who don't eat or drive, was up also 0.6%. And the year over year number was really the problem. It was 7.5%. That's a new high, going all the way back to 1982. And I might remind you that 1982 was after the Carter administration, where rates were dramatically higher. And Paul Volcker came in and absolutely smacked the market upside the head with interest rate hikes and killed off that inflation. And that, in fact, started what I would call the greatest bull market in history, being 1982 August through now. So 7.5% year over year versus 6% expected. And the core CPI was also 7.5% versus 4% expected. So it was a very tough day. Now, the futures in the morning at 7:45 were up 95 at 8:25 right before the number came. Dow was up 66. What you have to remember there is that Disney was up the equivalent of 90 Dow points. The NASDAQ at 7:45 was up 2. At 8:25, it was down 19. And as the market was actually opening, it had moved to minus 175. S&P, the same periods, up 2, down 3, and at the open, down 33. Now, the market shook that off, and I think that today was a pivotal day, and I'll tell you why. Over the last week or so, we have started to see big buying into the last hour, as opposed to 2 and 3 and 4 weeks ago, when we saw selling into the last hour because nobody wanted to hold positions overnight. So I thought we might be turning, but today, as I said, was pivotal. So we had the market, and it regained everything that it had lost, and the Dow was up 280, and it started to falter. The NASDAQ was also up over 200, and the S&P was up about 60. However, the selling started to accelerate when another one of those idiots from the Fed started talking and started admitting just how far behind the curve we are. And you got to love Stephen Roach, who is really a very funny guy if you can get past his goofy look. When he said that the Fed has lost, this is my favorite quote, that the Fed has lost sight of what they're doing. In fact, they're so far behind on inflation, they can't even see the curve. There's an article up on our Discord page of Stephen Ross. Okay, so we had Disney, which traded as high as 166.75, and that was up really substantially. This morning at the open, it was 158, up 10.5. It could only manage to hold on to $4.93, or a 3.4% gain. And let's see. We had Coca-Cola also with great earnings beat. The stock was trading 62.30, closed the day at 61.28, up only 24 cents, 0.4%. Uber, as I mentioned this morning, also beat and had a great move to the upside. Unfortunately, they had an investor call also. So the stock, which was trading at 42.56, up $2.30, traded straight down on the call, straight down to 37 and a quarter, and closed 37.95, down 219. So basically $4 lower than it was early. And affirmed is the one that I've complained about before because I think it's a symptom of a real problem. This is the buy now, pay later, which it now looks like might possibly be buy now, pay never. And the problem with Affirm is that they don't have the same kind of structure that MasterCard and Visa have, or American Express, where they're collecting massive amounts at 1.67% on every transaction. So they really don't have a lot to fall back on. Well, Affirm this morning got up as high as 83.57. That was up 9. The earnings leaked. They weren't supposed to come till after the close, but they leaked. And frankly, I'm a big proponent of putting out the earnings during market hours so that um, you at least give the little guy a shot of being able to deal with whatever the result of those numbers is. Traded from 83 and change down to 50, and it closed 55.51, down $18.71, or 24%. Pretty ugly. Okay, in the Dow, we were 26 down and 4 up. The biggest winners were, as I mentioned, Disney, adding 32 Dow points, and Boeing, adding 19 Dow points. On the other hand, the losers were pretty extreme. We had UNH giving up 74 Dow points, Home Depot 60, Microsoft 38, Amgen 54, and Honeywell and Visa in the $30 range. So we finished down $5 and $526, or 1.4%. The market internals there were 3-1 to the downside, after being 3-1 to the upside this morning. NASDAQ closed down 304.73. That was the big loser, down over 2%. And the advanced declines there were 2-1 to the downside. Volume, by the way, was up 20% from yesterday on the reversal. It traded 5.1 billion versus yesterday's 4.2 billion. S&P, after being up on the day, down 83.10, 1.8%. The Russell, which was up when the other markets were down, finally gave in and moved down 32.34, or 1.55. Transports down 1.7%, 267 points. And as I mentioned last night and this morning, the VIX was a teenager again, not by much. 1996 was yesterday's close. Today's 23.99, right back up $3.95, or 20%. So not great. Oil traded to the upside as high as 91.74, but came all the way back down to 89.88, but was up 22 cents. The gold was all over the place, got up to 1843, closed 1837.40. That was up 80 cents. This was the problem that I was concerned about, why we got out early. We sold our calls at, I believe it was $2.56. Now, the last trade on those gold calls was 3 1/4. But the only reason that that's up there is because there was so little volume in them that they were 226 bid, offered at 235. So they were actually almost a dollar cheaper. And tonight, as you can see on the screen, gold is down $9.40, which means these things are going to get crushed tomorrow. I would always rather be out early than late. Bitcoin traded as high as almost 46,000, but closed 44,180, down 675. Um, the dollar was up a nickel, and that's kind of to be expected when we have a rise in interest rates. And the 10-year moved from 190 to 193 to 204. That's where it closed, 204. And that was up 11 basis points from last night's close. There was also an auction today of the 30-year, and Rick Santelli, who grades these things, gave it a D minus. So there wasn't a lot of support for it, and it traded lower after the deal was done. Nat gas had been down 12. It closed down 5. Our options in UNG were down about a dime. Does not concern me at all. It's exactly the same thing that happened last time we traded it. And the corn, this one was exceptional. I've been trading the corn as a future recently. And the last buy that I had was right here against the uptrend line, the 20-day. And as you can see, this is a huge, I don't think you understand how big a move this is. The margin on this is a couple of $1,000s. The move from 2 days ago, from the level of 632 to today's high at 662, is $30. Pardon me, 30 cents a bushel at $50 a cent. So that was a move of 30 points, $1,500 on a $2,000 margin. But it too got caught up in interest rates, higher numbers, and actually closed down on the day. This is a devastating move for this chart, I think. I'm going to have to move away from this because we got through the 78% Fibonacci, 78.6, and we're right into this area where we broke down the last time. There is a gap. I've mentioned this gap before, but that gap is now closed. The low here was 652 and 3/4. Today's high was well through that, and it closed below it again. So I'm going to need to see some rebuilding before I do anything there. Anyway, that's what I have for you folks. The only economic news tomorrow is consumer sentiment. And, I'm just going to editorialize here. We don't need the very politicized Fed to raise rates. As is always the case, the market never lies, and the market has already raised rates. So if these jackasses in Washington would get their heads out of wherever they happen to be and raised rates in the middle of the night tonight, a half a point, at that point, the market would have a little bit more confidence that at least they're going to do something. Because up until now, they've done nothing. They're still buying bonds. In what world does that make sense? Anyway, that's the way I feel. That's what I say. Have a good evening. I'll be back first thing in the morning.